Good morning, everyone. Believe it or not, we had about 80 people sign up for this session this morning, and we have about 60 chairs set up, so I think the weather might have impacted some of our participation a little bit. We've got a little bit different format for you today. We're going to try to get you in and out of here in an hour. So it's going to be almost like speed dating when it gets to the Q&A session later. Hopefully we'll have enough experience in this room from federal, state, and local and regional that we can provide you some very quick answers to some of your questions if you have them this morning. When we get to that part of the agenda, if we need to get into any more detail or drill down into any more specific conversations, we will send out some emails with that detail to you later. So I am going to keep my welcome very brief so we can get to the meat of the agenda. Welcome and thank you all for coming this morning. My name is Nathan Poore, by the way. I'm the PACTS committee chair. Thanks.
That's good to know.
Speed dating, right. Good morning, I'm John Duncan. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for the intro, Nathan. Welcome you all, particularly the state and local elected officials. 23 of you have signed up to be here today, and it's a great turnout. I'm sure we're going to see some more people who are surviving the weather as they come in. This is our 5th annual transportation briefing. They've all been very well attended. It's a great opportunity to hear from MaineDOT Commissioner Bernhardt talking about transportation policies and plans at the state level, and to engage him on topics of interest to us here. Great communication leads to great regional collaboration. So that's what we do at PACTS, and thank you all for continuing that or contributing to that here today. I'm going to take a few minutes to cover a couple of topics of interest to us here in the Portland area. It was a tough job figuring out which ones to highlight. There's an awful lot going on, but we'll get to, I think, of the breadth of it during our Q&A. Particularly for those listening at home on their public access TV stations, and folks perhaps new to the PACTS process, I'm going to quickly tell you what PACTS is about. Our primary role is to collaborate with the Maine DOT in deciding how to spend federal capital, primarily capital money in the Portland area. Secondly, we have a regional transportation plan. There's a sketch of the highlights of the Destination Tomorrow regional plan there on the wall. We use that as a guide as we decide how to spend funds in our region. We do an awful lot of studies with you, with the Turnpike Authority, with the Maine DOT, and others. And many of those recommendations get implemented by your organizations, by the state, and others. And finally, as I've already said once, I'll say it one more time, we do a lot of communication and coordination between the federal agencies involved, between our municipal members, with our transit systems, with the Maine DOT, with the Greater Portland Council of Governments, a lot of players, and it takes a lot of work to achieve good collaboration between us all. My second topic today of 3 is to highlight the 23 by 23 report that we put together earlier this year. I've put some copies on your chairs, and there's a number of copies in the back of the room, as well as some boards that describe 23 plans and projects of regional significance that we would like to achieve in the next 10 years, the year 2023, which will be 10 years from now in a few days. This is not our regional transportation plan. I've already referenced that. But it's a compilation of the many studies that you all have done in the last few years and put a lot of work into with your citizens and your elected officials. And these are great concepts and well-thought-out ideas, and we've put them all together in one place. And I hope you get a chance to look at that report. It outlines an $875 million need in the next 10 years, and we have $225 million that we are estimating available. And that leaves a big gap. What's new? But that's one. I'm going to quickly highlight two of the 23. One is the Regional Traffic Signal Management Study recommendations. Scarborough, Westbrook, Portland, and South Portland are overseeing a regional traffic signal system with the help of Carl Epic, the PACTS transportation planner, and it's just a great regional initiative. And if you have any questions about that, we've got some maps in the other room, and Carl's here to answer questions about that. I also want to highlight the work that described in that 23 by 23 report about our region's collector roads. There are 200 miles of collector roads in our region, and we've done a lot of great work, and I thank you all. I thank the municipalities and the state for investing more in these collector roads in the last few years, in taking other initiatives to make it more feasible to preserve these important roads in our region. That work has been done by many of you individually as municipalities, as well as an awful lot of work collectively at PACTS. And the PACTS Senior Transportation Planner, Paul Niehoff, has played a major role in leading that work. So that's another success story. I will put a little asterisk on it by saying that our estimate is that we need $180 million to really take good care of all the 200 miles of those collector roads in the next 10 years. And we have about $40 million that we are confident we will have. So that is a top priority here at PACTS, and we are working on how to address that gap in the next 10 years. My third and final topic is to recognize the work that the Maine DOT and you all in the municipalities in particular, and PACTS staff, and many others. Nancy Grant here is from the Bicycle Coalition of Maine, on what many of us are calling active transportation. It involves our work to make biking and walking safer and easier in our communities. It involves completing our streets. It involves expanding our local and regional networks of paths and trails and paved shoulders and sidewalks. We are calming the traffic actively. We are more aware of the health benefits of walking by our children and by those of us like me who are looking ahead to retirement somewhere on the horizon, and the health benefits of people who are retired, the health benefits for everyone in our communities of walking more. And of course, compact communities enable walking more as well. So in summary, this is great work by us all, and by mentioning this today, our viewers are reminded of this. And so we will continue to work on this in the years to come here at PACTS with you. So that's my overview of just a handful of topics in our region. So now I will turn the podium over to the commissioner. We will go to the Q&A, as Nathan mentioned, and we have a handheld microphone that Ben Lake will hand you to so that the folks at home can hear the question. The The Commissioner and the Department have the challenge to manage a transportation system that is vastly larger than the transportation system in our neighboring state, New Hampshire. And to get it done with about the same amount of federal money as New Hampshire gets. And the Commissioner and his staff have done some very exciting and effective work during the last couple of years. And I would call it innovating on a daily basis to make things happen. So he's going to share some of those successes with us today. And Commissioner, thanks for coming.
Thank you, John. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
As John said, what I want to talk to you about today is about 5 topics. I wanted to give you a little insight on what we call the Municipal Partnership Initiative. Talk to you a little bit about the latest federal reauthorization called MAP 21, Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century, which is a 2-year reauthorization. Also want to talk to you a little bit about our strategic plan, our latest strategic plan, a little bit about what people are hearing as the fiscal cliff and what does that do for transportation, and also talk to you a little bit about our latest work plan that'll be coming out soon and how we're making some changes to that. But for some of you, the Municipal Partnership Initiative is something we started about at the beginning of this latest biennium. And what it is we work with municipalities, and it's a partnership where if they come to us with funding, I will match it 50% up to $500,000. And so we started this. I wanted to make it very simple, though. The agreement is, I think, about 1.5 pages, typical agreements that we have in municipalities. I think the shortest one I had ever seen was 8 pages. So the idea was to make it very simple. It was to allow them to do the work. And basically all we do, we use state highway funds, which is very flexible, a lot more flexible than federal funds. And what we do is basically cut them a check. We work with them. We have some rules that we'd like them to follow. It does have to be on a state highway or state aid highway. What we've seen to date is we've got about 32 projects out there. 21 are ongoing as we speak, or most of them were even complete in this last, so we got around another 11 or so, with 23 communities. And we started with $7 million. I put $7 million aside in state funding. And the idea was to match, so I was thinking, you know, $14 million in the end for that program. Right now, it is at about 18.3. We did add some funding. We were able to add some funding from savings that we had done through personal service savings and other efficiencies that we had completed, so we were able to put almost another $1 million in there. But the municipalities have matched it with about $10.3 million. So it's at about $18.3 million to date. And it's about 36 miles of improvements to roads that most likely we at the DOT would not have made improvements to. I think of them as our cul-de-sacs, but they're very important to the municipality. And so I have heard really nothing negative from any of the municipalities that have been involved. So one of the things we're doing in this latest work plan is we want to continue to fund that. So I'm looking at funding it at around $10 million, starting in the 14-15. And again, it's state funding, state highway funding. So it's tough to get it's money that's very hard to come by. And so if we match it, if we're able to do that, $10 million. I think we're going to continue this program. One of the things we're also looking at is called a Developer Partnership Initiative. And I'm looking to put funding in that. And what that is in the past, typically what we would do is if a developer wanted to make improvements over a certain amount, they have to go through the traffic movement permit. And a lot of times they would have to pay for all the improvements on the road. They might work with their municipality who might come up with some funding.
But what I say is that if it's very important to the state to expand some of these businesses, why not us come in and partner? And so if we can put, say, $5 million aside, we might be able to do some partnerships if we can be nimble enough, because typically businesses come in, they want to do their thing. If we can work with the municipality and the business, say a third, I think there's some things that we can do that we have been unable to do in the past. And again, this is really, it's to be nimble, it's to move quick, and one of the reasons we started doing this, it's all about leveraging each other's money. And we even see that at the federal level. The feds now are starting to say, you know, it always used to be 80% Fed, 20% state. That's not typical anymore. There's a lot of times when it's less than that on a federal level. I think all in our whole budget, it's only about 38% is federal money. So what we're seeing is that we are having to leverage. Recently, we got 2 Tiger grants. The last 2, we were successful in getting Tiger grants. And what we did is, I think we were successful because we leveraged more than 20%. We leveraged 50% on one and 40% on the other. So it's going that way at a federal, state level, and I feel that if we all can agree at a state and a local level and even a business level, I think there's some things we can do, and we can make some major improvements, and we can also see some economic opportunity there. So that's where the Municipal Partnership Initiative is. I had been asked many times if we were going to continue it, so I just want to let everybody know we are going to continue it. We are going to put more money into it, and I think it's a very successful program. So I just see it being more successful. And I got to tell you, if $10 million is not enough, and we do again make savings, we see some savings, we will again try to put as much money into this as we can. The next thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about today is the MAP 21, and that's the new reauthorization. It's a 2-year reauthorization. So in a very short period of time, they already got to start thinking about the next reauthorization. In the past, some of the bills had been upwards to 6 years in length. This, of course, was just 2. We were nervous that it was going to be just 1. The prior reauthorization had ended in 2009, and I think we were on our 9th extension, and so it was going to be 10. What we saw from a funding level is it's pretty much flat funded, and that is a good word in today, is flat funded. What we had heard almost 2 years ago, I happened to be in Washington at the, it's in March when AASHTO gets together and they call it the Washington briefing, and they were talking about what the new reauthorization was going to look like, and at that time they were talking about a 30 to 35% cut in federal funding. That would hurt us. That would hurt most states. And so, you know, whether they did that to make us feel good 2 years from then in saying that it's flat funded, I don't know, but flat funding is the good word. There's a lot of things in MAP 21 that has nothing to do with funding, though, and there's a lot of good things. And basically what it is they really wanted to get into the acceleration of project delivery and the promotion of innovation. That's one of the things at the department that we have been very good at, and we've seen a lot of that in the last 2 or 3 years, whether it's bridge in a backpack, whether it's design build, construction manager, general contracting. These things are very innovative. And those are the things that the feds would really like the states to do. Typically what happened in the past is one state might do this great thing, and it might take 10 years before it gets out there. So what they're trying to do is, through this reauthorization and through other things, a program they call Everyday Counts, they're trying to get this innovation out there much quicker. Just recently, it started on a Sunday last week, and we were there, and Monday and Tuesday, a group of us went down to Rhode Island for this, what is called Everyday Counts. And for the day and a half, what we did is we talked about these innovative things that we are doing. And I got to tell you, we are ahead of the game. We have a couple states that are going to be coming up to Maine to find out why we do the things we do and how are we doing that. One of the things that you're going to see in MAP 21, it talks about performance measures, and that is something the department we are very high on is performance measures. One of the things that we set in place almost 3 years ago was a performance measure of delivery. I mean, the fact of the matter is that's what we do. We are a capital program, and our job is to get work out for our customers, customers being the traveling public. And so the thing is that we felt we weren't getting the work out in a timely manner. So we've worked very hard, and in the last 3 years, 3 years ago, our goal was to hit 80% within 30 days of the day that we scheduled the project. And I got to tell you, the way it works is we schedule all our projects at the beginning of the year, and it is for that construction season. Matter of fact, those dates closed, our project managers closed those dates this last Friday. It's usually December 15th is the last day. They're set for 2013. All the schedules are in, they're in the system. They will be out on the website for everybody to see. The first year they hit 78%, the second year they hit 85%, and this year, at the end of this year, they're going to have 89 to 90% of what they said they were going to do a year ago, this January 1st, they've completed. I talked about that at EDC, and I had some other CEOs come up and say, Dave, how do you do it? I can't get my staff to even think that, and so they're going to be coming up. We recently had a meeting with New Hampshire and Vermont, and basically the three of us, the 3 states, we call it a tri-state partnership, we have that same goal. They're probably around 50 to 60%, whereas we're at 90. But we're a little ahead of the game because we've been doing it for 3 years. One of the things I'll be talking about in a minute is strategic plan, and we'll also talk a little bit about performance measure. But really, this new reauthorization, it's not as much about the money, but it's about streamlining and it's about performance. So basically what the feds are going to be looking for, and that is at a DOT level, it is at an MPO level, is they're going to want to look and they're going to want to know how we are performing. Okay, so what the U.S. DOT will be doing is they will be establishing the measures. Now this is over a period of time. I think it's like 18 months from October 1st. They're supposed to come up with some of these measures, and then I think they're going to report on this in about 5 years. 5 years from October 1st is the date that they have to report. They're going to set the measures, but the states, the MPOs, will be setting the targets, the goals. And so what I will be looking for, as in what we're doing, is we need to set some targets that are reasonable, that make sense, but we want to see that needle move. We need to manage this. We need to have asset management where we can see the needle move. I mean, we can pave, we can reconstruct, we can build bridges all day long, but if we don't know that we're improving, you know, how can we plan into the future? So we really need to set these targets, and we need to know, are we meeting them? And we need to know, are we moving the needle forward? Are we getting better? So the feds will be setting the measures. We are going to be setting the targets, which makes sense. Also, when they're setting the measures, they're going to be looking to us for help. So we are going to help set those measures. What are those measures? And we've been doing a lot of things. One of the other things this reauthorization did is there was all these programs out there, and what they did is it focused them down into just a few major core programs. One is the National Highway Performance Program. The other is the Safety Transportation Program, the Highway Safety Improvement Program, and CMAC, or the Congestion Mitigation. There's also the Transportation Alternatives Program. So it took 60 and it really kind of narrowed it down. One of the things it did do, though, is it took away mostly all the discretionary grant programs. So you're not going to see that. What it did for the MPOs is basically it sets it up that they have to do a lot of the things that we are doing, meaning it's going to make them look at performance measures, performance goals, and make sure that they're seeing some improvements in those MPO areas, but they will be helping set those targets. So that's kind of where MAP 21 is, and it's interesting as we work with our federal partners. They're learning at the same time what the bill, you know, I think it's some thick thing like this, so But basically, they're learning at the same time we are, but I think we are very much ahead of the game, and I think we'll see some major improvements in the future. One of the other things that we've done over the last year and a half, talk to you a little bit about our strategic plan. One of the things I do have, and if anybody wants, I do have some that they don't need to have them now, but feel free to come up and grab one of these. This is something that I pass out to all the staff at the Department of Transportation, all 1,900 of them. What I had seen in the past is we had had strategic plans. The fact is, though, is that there was only a small group in the department that had ever seen it, and typically it was those people that put it together. It was about 2 years ago. I think I was at some annual meetings with some of the programs. And typically there's 50 to 100 people in a room, and I would ask who saw the 2005 strategic plan, and you might have 2 hands raised. So I saw that as a problem. Everybody in the department should know what our strategic plan is, because that's what we do. What we did, though, is we took existing strategic plan. It was originally done in 2005. It was a good document. We modified it in 2010, but because of administration changes, commissioner change in 2011, I wanted to update it and really look at, make it strategic. This is what we can do. Because what I had seen in past strategic plans, it was trying to be everything to everybody, and it's just with the funding and the things that were going on at the time 2 years ago when we were looking at it, we really had to focus it down. And so instead of 6 goals, we really focused it down into 3 goals. And we took a mission and kind of focused it down. Basically, our mission is to responsibly provide our customers the safest and most reliable transportation system possible. And we added this, given available resources, because that is what it's all about. You only have so much resource, you can only do so much stuff. And so basically, if you listen to that, if you see that mission, there's just a few words that you have to take out. Customer, it's very customer focused, because that is our responsibility, is to our customers. Define customer, okay? To me, the customer is the person using the system. It's the person riding the bus. It's the person riding the train. It's the person driving on the road. It's the person using the ferry. Our partners would be a municipality, would be our industry. Those are partners. We work together for that same customer. And so we really tried to focus it on the customer, and we use the 2 words safe and reliable, because that's what we can do given those available resources. We also really looked at our vision and core values, and the vision is just to be the most trusted organization in Maine. And basically what we needed to do is we needed to gain people's trust. Because if you're ever asking for other resources and other funding, they have to trust that you're doing the right thing with the funding that you have. So that was very important. And we also looked at some core values. Now, I've looked at other agencies and other businesses, and they have typically core values. They might have like 11. And so we really wanted to focus it down into like 3, and it's integrity, competence, and service. It's to a point now where we even put it on our vehicles, because we really want to see people that that's what we're focused on, and we really want to be looking at that. So our 3 goals. Basically, goal number 1 is to maintain this system that we have. The system we have out there is huge. As John mentioned, it's twice what New Hampshire takes care of with the same funding. And New Hampshire is also a third the size. So not only do we have twice the roads, but we are spread out. And so we have 8,500 centerline miles of road that we have to take care of. We have 2,676 bridges we take care of. We have a ferry service. We have trains. We have 550 miles of freight rail, and with about 330 of that is active. We have bike and pedestrian trails. We have all these things that we have built. Well, we got to keep them up. We have a transit system with 450-something buses, and some of them are getting old, and so we need to replace those. So we have to maintain this massive thing that we've built. Very important. The number 2 goal was to support economic opportunity. Whenever we see it, let's support that, because transportation is so big and so huge, and such an integral part of the economics in the state of Maine. You're moving goods, services, people. Without it, your economy dies. Whether it's ports, whether it's rail, whether it's by highway, whatever it is, you really have to support that. And one of the things that we wanted to do, and I mentioned that in the DPI, is be nimble. We need to be nimble because businesses need to move fast. Last goal was very simple. It was just to build trust. And that was internally as well as externally. So internally to my staff as well as externally to all the people in this room, our customers and whatever, is to build their trust. Very important. That's the strategic plan. Like I said, I do have a little copy, talks a little bit about it. One of the other things we did in the strategic plan is we did have some performance measures for certain groups in the department. I said everybody in the department is going to have a performance measure as part of their performance expectation, even the plow driver. And I got to tell you, they did a damn good job. I came down from Augusta, and not one car was off the road. And that's kind of my test right there. I didn't see anybody off the road. So it was good. They got an A+. The fiscal cliff. I want to talk to you just, you know, everybody's talking about the fiscal cliff. And what does that mean for transportation? Well, the core programs on the highway, on the federal funding is exempt. So there's no cutting of anything at that level. But there could be some things because the Highway Trust Fund has been shored up with some general fund money. Those things could be cut. And they would be looking more like in some transit things and some of those things. But I don't think it's going to be that big a deal for us. And to tell you the truth, I think January 2nd is a date that they set, and I think they set the date, they can change the date. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I don't think they're going to allow things to fall off. But the fact of the matter is from the Department of Transportation's perspective, the fiscal cliff is not going to hurt us as much as it might hurt some other general fund agencies. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about today is our work plan. We are making some changes. What we are doing is we are going to 3 years, okay? So this next work plan is going to be 13, 14, and 15. What we're going to do is we are going to update that every year. So a year from now, it'll be 14, 15, 16. The other thing we're doing is there's no more of this fiscal stuff, fiscal year, because we deal with federal fiscal year, we deal with state fiscal year. Our customers think calendar year. We've been doing that with our schedule, working with industry. What are you building this year? Not what are you building between July 1st and June 30th or October 1st and September 30th. It's what are you building this year? So what we're doing is we are going to a 3-year program starting January for 13. What you're going to see is 13 will be locked down. This is the work we're doing. It's going to have a schedule. 14, 15 will have projects with funding, but you could see some movement between 15 and 14, 14 and 15. They won't have lockdown dates. A year from now, you're going to lock down 14, and then you'll have 15 and 16. And that way, instead of every 2 years, us having to go through all this work to put this biennial program together, every year we're going to be doing this. So we will be working with our partners, municipalities, MPOs, and all this to make sure that we get this updated. The systems that we have today take care of all the fiscal issues with funding and stuff, and we're pretty much cash flow anyway, so it'll take care of that. We're only getting federal funding in October to the whatever, in the state funding from July to stuff. Systems take care of that, but basically for our customers, we are going to get this out, and it will be not going to be printing a bunch of books like we used to do in the past. It's pretty much going to be on our website for everything to see. One of the other things you're going to see in this work plan, typically the work plan was very capital based. It was the work we were going to be doing. But transparency today, what we like to do and what we will be doing, is it's everything that we do. So you're going to also see the maintenance side, what they're doing. You're going to see what it costs to do certain things like plowing, and what does it cost in a given year. We're talking about $32 million to make sure in any given year. That's about average what we spend on in the winter. So we need to show that. Administrative, what are we spending on administration? So all those things are going to be in this work plan. It's a total work plan. It's maintenance, it's capital, it's administration, it's all those things. So you're going to be able to see all these things instead of just the projects, which is what you would have typically seen. So we're moving in that direction. And like I said, it'll be this January. It'll come out January 1st, or sometime in January. It's the first time, so we're working feverishly on it. It will be January. Herb is the director of planning. We've had a lot of high-level meetings in the evening and going late, so sorry about that, Herb, giving you a heart attack. But anyway, a lot of things are going on, and I think I've done my 20, 30 minutes now. So with that, I think we'll take questions. Sure. All right.
Floor is open.
I'll sit down.
You can't be that easy.
I guess.
Can we have the mic?
Yeah. Ben, do you have it?
Ben?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
It's only for recording. Just like.
Okay. I guess the question on everybody's mind would still be the issuance of the bonds. If you could address a little bit of that, if you have any insight as to what's happening with the bonds that were approved in November, or will we be looking at any future bonds that are coming? So, $1 million question.
$1 million question. I do need to use this, okay. What I know to date is that the bond was approved, and what you've seen from the governor is that everything you've seen is that he would be looking at a January 2014 date to cash in any of those bonds. What I would tell you is this, is that like I mentioned the work plan, 2013 is pretty much set. Anything that we are going to be building this year in 2013, you needed to know that 2 years ago. If it's major reconstruction, those things that take permitting and right-of-way and those types of things. We can move certain things, rehabilitations and pavement preservation and those kinds of things along much quicker, but anything that takes those things, you really needed to know. So 2013 is set. So to issue a bond in January of 2014 really works perfect for us, because that's when the funding is needed in that 14-15 year. Whether somebody wants to come forward and do another bond, I'm not sure. One of the things, when it comes to bonding is that it is okay to borrow money as long as your debt to revenue ratio is okay. I got to tell you, I know some states that borrowed so much money that they pay more toward their interest than they do to match their federal funds, and they are hurting right now. So you just got to be cautious that you're borrowing at a rate that is good for you. And people forget that it wasn't that many years ago, even in the early 2000s, we used to bond every other year. Basically at the beginning of the biennium, that's when you put a bond out, and they were typically around $25, $28 million. It wasn't until 2008, 9, 10 where we had some of those where we did it like every year for a period at the beginning of the recession. So it's not typical that we would do it every year anyway. So, but it's just a cautious thing. I look forward to being able to sell the bond in 2014, and that's when we would use it. That's when we would need the money the most anyway.
Thank you.
I think maybe, Commissioner, if you could stand up there. I think I have a hunch you're going to get most of the questions, and then Ben can.
That's no fair.
More questions.
Commissioner, we fund a lot of our transportation, I believe, and repaving, et cetera, through the gas tax. Can you talk a little bit about whether we should be adjusting that gas tax from your perspective?
Both at a state and federal level, I know there's some states that are talking about it, but whether I believe that it would be nice to have more funding, I got to tell you, it would be nice to have more funding. and whether I believe a gas tax is the way to go, that really is a policy issue for the policymakers. And I got to believe both at a federal and a state level, people are just not prepared to raise the gas tax. And I do know there are some states that are thinking about it, doing it some different ways. And it was even talked about maybe for about a day at a federal level. But it usually gets squashed pretty quick. But whether I believe it would be a good thing or not, it's a policy issue. It's for the policymakers, and they're the ones that would have to decide whether they believe we should raise the gas tax. One penny does give us about $7 million, the department.
Commissioner, do you have any ideas of a way to long-term fund our transportation needs? Because obviously, as CAFE standards improve, our ability to collect fuel tax goes down. So we're going to have to look at a new source of funding for transportation. Have you given any thought to that?
Well, I think anybody in transportation has given them some thought. I don't have the list here, but in some of my workings with AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, federal, those at a federal level, there's about 23 different things that people have come up with, whether it's vehicle miles traveled and all these things that are out there in ways to increase. What I see most states doing at this point is tolling, and that is something we are not looking at. A lot of the states, especially up the northeast corridor, they're looking at increasing their tolls or tolling roads that weren't tolled. And that is something in MAP 21, or the reauthorization, is the ability to do some of that stuff. The vehicle miles traveled, the problem is with those, it really has to be done at a national level, because you just can't have just one state doing it, even though there are some states like Oregon and some others that are looking at pilots. I think eventually that will be the way we go, but I think it's still out there a ways. And so there's this list of 23 things that we're all looking at, but it's just going to take us some time to get there.
Thank you. It was my understanding, or for what I've heard, bike ped funding from the feds is being cut for next year. Is that the case, or is it being flat funded?
What you've seen is when I talked about those programs, there used to be a transportation enhancement program. It's now transportation alternatives. So yes, what you've seen is money that was specific to bike ped. That kind of went away. It got put into transportation alternatives, which does have some bike ped, but it is reduced. But what we will be looking at is finding ways with our regular funding and our regular projects to make the improvements necessary to make sure that we are integrating bicycle and pedestrian into highways and whatever it is, and work together collaboratively to get the biggest bang for the buck. Whether it's, for instance, there's some great examples of that around here. You've got Veterans Bridge, which took all that into consideration. You got Falmouth Martins Point is doing the same thing, is to look at ways that we can integrate this. I think we still will be doing some specific bike trails, but yes, the funding did change and it was reduced.
Could you tell us about the funding for buses? There were buses in the bond that passed, and there are a lot of, well, we need buses. And what is the state going to do, and what share are you going to provide that you have in comparison to what you've provided in the past? Thank you.
Well, what we're seeing is the buses, and that typically comes through Federal Transit, and what we're seeing is there is some change through MAP 21 on how they give their funding, but we are going to be looking at replacing buses as fast as we can with the funding that we have. what I believe, and I might not get this all totally correct, is FTA is looking at also doing it by formula instead of discretionary. They used to do it by discretionary. I'm getting a shake from Tom, so I'm saying the right thing. And so basically what we will be looking at is formula money. We will be doing some match through our what used to be called the STAR account. Now it's called the multimodal, and we have part of that is the multimodal transit account. And there is a huge need there. We understand it. We know that. I met with the Transit Authority not that long ago, and we sat down, and the need is in the millions of dollars. And but FTA understands that and knows that, and I think that's where they want to put their money, is into maintaining the facilities that they have today, meaning your bus facilities and your buses.
Thank you, but I'd like to ask a follow-up question to that. So the bottom line is, are you expecting, say, Metro, for example, to be paying more than they have in the past in this formula for buses? So a higher percentage?
I don't believe they're going to be paying, no. Not sure. We got a shake.
Oh, boy, I hope that's true. No?
I don't know that I have that answer for you. So.
Is that something that you could provide to us?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we'd appreciate it, Metro.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner, would I add just a little bit to
You
that?
can.
And
Thank you.
I'm not going to be able to answer the match question, but I will say that the Federal Transit Administration is sending more money to the Portland area, but at the same time, as the Commissioner mentioned a few minutes ago, there are virtually no discretionary programs. So the transit systems in our region have been meeting recently with FTA in this room to talk about the good news that there is more money, but there isn't enough. But they're working together to decide how to use it. So it's not a rosy answer, but it's just more information.
Commissioner, you said your #1 goal is to maintain the existing system.
Correct.
You also indicated you need to do that with available funding. How do your benchmarks show that you're doing in taking care of the existing system?
Well, what we did is last session we set into statute priority corridors and customer service levels. And so for all the roads that we take care of, we set customer service levels for all the different types. Priority corridors we set in with 5 priorities, priority 1 through 5, and it's very intuitive. Priority 1s are like your interstates, your major principal arterials, and it works its way down. Each one of those has a customer service level that we would like to meet, okay? And of course, what people expect on the interstate is somewhat different than they might expect on a minor collector state aid. So we set those in place, so now we have a needle. And what we did also in statutes, we set goals. And so by over the next 10 years, we would like to see like our priority 1 and 2 roads up to a C or better. Basically, our customer service levels is also intuitive. It's A through F. And D's and F's are not good. C's and above are okay. C's is okay. A's and B's are great. So that's how we set it. That's how we set the program. And what we're trying to do is we want to see that needle move. And so now that we have that in place, we'll be able to tell. You can go into our website, the DOT Internet website, and I can tell you that you can, right on the front page talks about priority corridors and customer service levels. You can go in and you can find the customer service level for any state road. And it'll tell you whether it's an A or an F. It's 3 indices. It is condition, safety, and service. Condition is a condition of the road. It's the rutting, it's the cracking, it's those things. Safety is run off the road crashes and some certain things. And service is whether, is it congested, is there posting on it, is it a posted bridge, posted road, whatever it is, those are the service. And then you can roll those up into one, but you can also look at the customer service level for each one of those 3 indices. And that's how we will know if we're moving the needle.
Hi, Commissioner.
Hey, Representative. How you doing?
Could somebody talk to us about any coordination of kind of big picture alternative transportation, such as having buses at the train station when the train arrives? You know, a bus dropping people off at ferry departures, kind of the big picture for coordination here.
Yeah, it's it.
I can speak to that. There are others here who, like Steve Linnell or Tom Myers, who could speak to that better than I. How about if I throw the ball to someone else?
Since nobody else is jumping up.
Thanks, Steve.
I believe we make all the efforts we can to coordinate. But as the Commissioner said several times, within the funding available. And we have basic level of service for rubber-wheeled transportation transit. And it's available for those people who need it, and it's not at the level to take people who really want to use it as an alternative at this point. We're doing everything we can to streamline it, make it work together. We've done studies to figure out where are the points that we need to meet, but the net's only so fine, and I guess I would.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit, Representative, is just recently I met with Mayor Brennan, Mark Reese, Mike Babinsky was there. It was a group, Greg and others, and that's one of the things we were talking about is the at the transportation center there in Portland. What are some of the things we can do, especially if they're going to see the build out of Thompson's Point and those kinds of things. So there is an effort. We are meeting. We've been talking. Is what can we see there? What can we do? We understand that you get a train that goes there. People get off, and there's such a short distance from getting to, downtown, a bunch of five-star restaurants. But how do they get there? They get off a train. It's like they're looking around. Where's my, they want to be able to have those. So we understand that, and we are working, and we are going to continue to work. Once we see some movement there, they've met quite a few times, a fairly large group to get together and talk about those exact issues. So a lot of good things could happen there. It will take some funding, but with that, I call that economic opportunity. So with that said, that is goal number 2, which is very important. So.
Commissioner, you mentioned a change to the STAR account, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. Are there changes in how those funds are sourced and used?
Correct. What we did is the STAR account, state transit, air, rail account. What we did is we broke it down into what we call multimodal accounts, and it was more because I was constantly getting, well, just use the STAR account. Just use the STAR account. For anything other than highway and bridge, it was always just use the STAR account. Well, the STAR account only has so much money. It started with a very small amount of money. I think when it started it was about 1.7, but it has morphed into this. There is a decent pool of funding, about $8 million a year, that get put in there from certain, all these other sources, car rental tax, aviation fuel, rail, all these things go into this account. And what we did is we broke it up into one, a kind of a larger multimodal transportation. That's it. And that's kind of where we put some funding, and that is so we can become, we're nimble and we're flexible. And that can go into any of these others. And what you have is multimodal rail, multimodal transit, multimodal aviation, multimodal passenger train. So we kind of broke them up into that. But it's also so people on the outside can look in and see what's in there for funding and know what they have. And so we put certain pots into those things, and but we still have the multimodal transportation as a whole, and some funding goes in that, and that is just to become nimble. It can go into any one of those, but it's when there's an opportunity that comes up, Can we be nimble enough? Can we move quick? So.
On the web?
I'm not sure where that is. I don't think that's on the web now, but there is a way that we can get you that type of information. Yeah.
David, I wanted to go back a little bit to the bonding question. I understand your analysis, and I appreciate the position that you're adopting. I would ask, however, if there's been an analysis on the following basis. If we're borrowing, say, $1 million, and you have essentially I haven't seen an interest rate recently above 3% for that kind of volume of borrowing. So let's say you got $30,000 on a 1%, and let's talk about the other cliff, the cliff of road deterioration once it hits the point at which it just drops off the edge, and you're running an additional cost of, let's say, 10 or 15% added. So if you're borrowing at 30%, I'm sorry, at 1% at $30,000, and you're deteriorating at 15% at $150,000, there's a delta of $120,000 each time you go out and try to do a project. That applies both to local and to state government. So has anyone done the analysis of what the additional cost is for not borrowing?
I haven't. What I got to tell you, borrowing is not necessarily a bad thing, okay? And I have not said that, but what you have to do is yes. Up to a certain point. I mean, there is only so, up to a certain point. Typically, when you bond and you borrow, that's over a 10 or 15-year life of that bond. What you're talking about on some of these roads is what we would call pavement preservation. Those things only have 10-year lives, okay? I don't necessarily want to be bonding for those types of things to keep the system to where it should be today. Typically, when you bond, you want it for transformational things. A bridge that's going to last 100 years. Reconstruction of a highway that's going to last for 20 years. And so those are the types of things that you look for bonding. You don't look for bonding to take care of your whole, the whole picture. So that's what we look at. We do keep track of our debt to revenue ratios, but the fact of the matter is that bonding is typically, again, is a policy issue for the policymakers. They're the ones who put the package together. What we do is we might ask them, we might give them information, we might give them, this is what we would do with it if we had it. But it's more of a policy issue and not as much me deciding that we're going to do a bond, because it's not up to me. So.
Commissioner, you mentioned earlier about MAP 21 relooking at the federal policy on tolling. I believe the current policy is that tolls can be added to a facility if it is to retire a debt for expansion of that facility. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but can you also expand a little bit on what MAP 21 does to change the federal policy?
On the tolling?
On tolling.
New tolls. Typically, the way it works is that you would have to add capacity, or it would have to be a new facility. It's not like if you did nothing to I-95 or I-295 through Portland, they are going to allow you to toll that. You wouldn't be allowed to toll that. Now, if you increased it to 6 lanes or something like that, you might be able to do something. You still have to go through a process. I know that there's some pilots going down the Northeast Corridor, but you really got to either add capacity or it's got to be new. It can't be an existing federal system that you just want to toll.
So MAP 21 doesn't make an adjustment to that policy?
No.
Commissioner, you talked about the STAR account, or whatever it's called now, has several different projects that draw money from that. Is the money that we raise for that STAR account divvied up by a percentage and deposited into these specific accounts, or is that just decided by the DOT or somebody else who gets however much money, and whether or not that particular agency, if they don't spend all their money but they're planning capital projects in the future, if that money could be swept and given to somebody else or not. Is it specific? Do you give a specific percentage to each person in the account, and does the money stay there?
We do. We break it down by percentage, and there's all different types of funds that are going into the STAR account. It could be aviation fuel tax. It could be the car rental tax. There's some rail leases. There's some freight tax. There's these things that all go into this account, and then we at the department parcel it out to the different modes. It's not a decision made outside that. It's the Department of Transportation parcels it out to the different modes. I got to tell you, it doesn't hang around there and people don't use it. It gets spent, and always for good things. We do try to prioritize, and typically you're looking for economic opportunity in those modes. Is what you're looking for. Where's the biggest bang for the buck? Where can you make the most improvements? But it doesn't get to hang around. There's no sweeping of the account that I know of, so we typically spend it.
Thank you. I'd like to wrap it up if we could, unless there's any more burning questions. We are going to be transforming this room in about 10 minutes for our policy committee meeting, but I'd like to thank Commissioner Bernhardt for coming here and helping us out with this, all these wonderful questions this morning. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank also all the elected officials. I better get over to the mic here, excuse me, Commissioner, so this is recorded appropriately. PACTS has been very fortunate to have, I think, built a far better relationship with DOT in the last 2 or 3 years. And some of the things that we heard this morning from the Commissioner, being nimble, looking for economic opportunities, those economic opportunities also taking into consideration multimode and alternative transportation. Hearing things about trust, moving complex bureaucracies into simpler and trying to understand that a little bit more, focusing your values and your core structure with 3 or 4 specific tasks rather than becoming overwhelmed with too many things that no one is really aware of. And it's interesting that PACTS is now going from a metropolitan planning organization to a TMA, or a transportation management area, because of our census kicking over 200,000. And one of the things we're dealing with is how can we better prepare for our long-range future, and looking at all these complexities and trying to get it a little bit simpler so that all of us can be focused and have all that built-in trust. So again, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody coming this morning. I thought we had a great round of questions. I think we had far more questions and answers this year in a matter of about 20-25 minutes than we did in an hour last year. So hopefully you like this format. Drive safe. Thank you.